Good. Check, check. Okay. All right, so you can just look at me.
Okay.
Unless you want to tell the audience something, then you can talk to the camera.
Well, read between the lines.
Not that.
Oh, okay.
All right, so I'm gonna put your name and everything at the bottom of the video, so I'm not gonna do all the introduction stuff, but I wanted to understand, like, what was the purpose? Like, how did the whole colored music, sorry, what's it called? The colored, yes.
My information.
Colored Music Club. Yes. So how did the whole Colored Music Club, like, how did that start? What was the purpose of it?
Well, it actually goes all the way back to the early 1900s. You know, with segregation and stuff, and more in particular, the fact that live music was entertainment. You didn't have TV back then.
Right.
Radio was, you know, and definitely no internet. So, you know, people would go to clubs, you know, nightclubs and things like that for music. And the unions back then was very strong. So if you didn't have a union card, you couldn't play a lot of those places.
Wow. Right.
You know, and again, if you were black, it was even harder because they didn't allow you in those locals.
Right.
So it wasn't until 1917 that the musicians here of color would finally have their own union, and it would be known as Local 533. And this is an interesting point about the 533. They knew what was a black union over a white union because black unions had 3 numbers, white locals had 2. So even if you called like out to LA or something, they would ask you what local. And if it was more than 2 numbers, as okay, I know what you are, you know.
Yeah.
But so 1917 they start that, and about the first 18 years or so, even though they called themselves they had the Colored Musicians Club, but they didn't have a permanent home. Not until 1934 when they were able to acquire 145 Broadway.
Okay.
And from that point on, now they had not only a place for the union to meet and, you know, talk, but they also had a club upstairs. Because the other part of the coin was they would get to play these swank white clubs, but they weren't allowed to stay afterwards. You know, so let's say, you know, you're a top musician, you packed house, and now, you know, people want to give you drinks, meal, but they weren't allowed to do it, and you weren't allowed to stay. So that usually, up until we had the club, they just had to go somewhere else, home mostly. But now they had a spot to go to afterwards. And here, it was even a better reason because when these famous musicians got done, they came to that club, they would eat, have a drink, but more importantly, they liked the music, they would join in on a jam session. And this was how a lot of our local musicians got heard and got to tour with many of these famous people. And then as time went by, many of them became famous in their own right.
Wow.
You know. But the other thing that was even more important about this union was the fact that the community mindedness of this local, I mean, they did a lot for the community. They had set up a credit union. So really, for the first time, the people in the community had a bank. Because you couldn't go to a regular bank.
Right.
So we had that going.
So now you have your own credit. Like,
Yeah.
Nice.
They set up an insurance with life benefits in there. So now they can have a decent burial, you know.
Nice.
So it's stuff like that, you know. These flies are pretty bad here. But
I need my microphone, man. Just 1 second.
I think they need you. They need you on stage, right?
Yeah, I need you on the stage.
Oh.
Yeah.